Hello, and welcome back to Robots Don't Age. I am your beautifully bearded co-host, Cody, and with me today is...
Keyauni, motherfuckers. What's up?
And today we will be taking a break from the robots and discussing something a little bit different, and that will be the supernatural, the spooky, the ghosts, the whatever I decide to title this episode. But in the meantime, we're going to discuss our recent. So, Keyauni, what you been up to?
Vibe checks galore, man. I have done so many of those lately, and I'm so grateful for it. It's been fucking fantastic. I, pulled a lot of business off of TikTok with those, which has been great. And I've been doing a lot of research into something called NFTs, which is a non-fungible token. It's essentially like a GIF or like a picture or, whatever those little thingies, but they're sold on what's called a blockchain. And then like people are like buying them. It's like an artist cryptocurrency, essentially, is what's happening. And so I've been doing a lot of research into those as far as like where that happens, how much it costs to get set up, like how it all works. Yeah, and how every time it's resold, you can get like a percentage off of it, because it's like they don't ever actually like own rights to the artwork. Like they can't create prints or anything off of that. They just own it in the blockchain, and that's it. And there's this one person's, like, it was a fucking cat with a Pop-Tart body, and it's got like, it looks like it's shitting a rainbow and running through the stars.
Yeah, Nyan Cat.
Yeah, that thing sold for $690,000.
Nyan Cat's been around since like 2011, 2010.
Yeah, okay, well, I didn't know that, but it sold for like $690,000. There's been a lot of our good friend Calvin, actually, mutual friend, shouts to Calvin, sent me a Twitter thing on NFTs. And so I read the thread, and I guess it's becoming like really popular right now. Like it's really popping. It's really popping. So I've been doing some research into that, on how I would do that and how I would get into that. And so I'm going to, try my hand at creating some NFTs.
Okay, that sounds good. Sounds creative. Sounds like something that I don't quite get on a base level, but I'm sure you'll be able to break down in the future.
Yeah, like I said, it's like a cryptocurrency. I don't know how much you know.
But like artist-based. I get the cryptocurrency idea, the artist-based part and all that in the blockchain, but I mean, it's, I don't necessarily have to understand it. It sounds interesting, though.
Yeah, it's basically people selling pictures for lots of fucking money, like a digitalized image of whatever it is that you create. So, yeah. I've also been listening to The Witching Hour by Anne Rice, which I think is kind of fitting for what we're about to go into. But so far, it's this old line of witches called the Mayfairs in Louisiana, like old southern Louisiana. And it's starting to come about that there's kind of like this conspiracy by one of the aunts, because apparently the Mayfair woman that's supposed to be in charge is the one that can see the devil. And so this one aunt has apparently successfully put away or killed all the women who were able to see the man, which is like the devil. And so she's got this like, then they're like supposed to be the most powerful, but she's got this child manipulated into thinking that it's bad and that it's a mortal sin and that it's awful. And then somehow she ends up getting her to a point where she's like drugged and just like in a wheelchair. And it's like this, so that she can continue to hold power. And it's this crazy fucked up thing. And then this guy, I'm not sure how he fits into the story quite yet.
Real quick, how far into the book are you, and how many spoilers are you giving away?
Not that far. I guess this one isn't a spoiler, really. It was just a guy who like almost drowned, and somehow he's connected. And yeah, that's about it. That's about as far as I've gotten with that.
Okay. Anything else you've been up to?
No, that's pretty much it. But yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I know I've been up to a few things, but more like the predominant things. TV-wise, I finished the television show Freaks Geeks. Have you seen that at all or heard of it?
I feel like I have. It's not coming to mind right now, but it sounds so familiar.
Okay, so it's on Hulu, and it's like, I think it's about roughly hour-long episodes, fairly good, but it's like a Judd Apatow show, And the reason why this is like a really popular show, it's the show that brought us and introduced Seth Rogen, I believe Jason Segel and James Franco as well.
Mm.
So they all started in this show. It takes place in high school in 1980, and it follows siblings Sam and Lindsay Greer. They both, respectively try to deal with middle school and high school in that time period. And I mean, it's just a really well done show. It still has like all the same casual tropes that you get. You have the nerds, the jocks, sci-fi stuff like that. It's called Freaks and Geeks because it follows the two main groups, the freaks and the geeks. The freaks are like the stoner kids that listen to rock and are kind of the burnout slash wastoids, and the geeks are like the D&D playing guys that just like to goof around and watch sci-fi and they get picked on and have to deal with bullies and everything like that.
Mm.
It's a great show, and like I had mentioned, it's a Judd Apatow property. That's kind of what made me want to rewatch it. I would recommend checking it out if anyone here hasn't seen it and they're really into sitcoms. It's really enjoyable, and it's just good high school show to watch.
Sounds fun.
And in terms of video games, I actually wanted to talk about two, but the first one being Hitman 3. Now, Keyauni, I know you're not much of a gamer, but have you heard of any of the Hitman games?
I have heard of them, yes. I have dated many a gamer in my life.
Okay, but you haven't. I mean, you get the basic concept, though. You play as Agent 47 and you go around killing targets.
Yes.
Okay, so this one's pretty much following that same formula. I mean, there's a storyline where you're taking down the ICA, which is the agency that's betrayed you. I didn't start the series of the first one. I started around Blood Money, and so like I kind of parsed together pieces of the story, but I don't really know that much of it. I mean, the main point for me is like I like to dress up as other people and stab people in the throat with a screwdriver. It's just a fun thing to do. Or like you can pick up a brick and just run up and smash someone and like breaks the brick over their head and knocks them out. Just like really stupidly violent stuff.
I enjoy that, actually, oddly enough.
There was this one person that I knocked out and took his disguise, and I tried to like dump his body over a ledge, but he fell down like I don't know 20 to 30 feet. You could just hear his bones break, and it killed him. So I had to like run down there, grab his body, and throw it over another ledge to hide it.
So what you're saying is you could just essentially like live out your murder fantasies throughout this game.
Yeah, you can kill people in a variety of ways. I'm not particularly clever with how I do it, and I'm not great at stealth. A lot of my things is like hiding around a corner and then popping up and shooting someone in the head. I did kill some. Oh, yeah, the look on their face when everyone's looking at them and they see only you aiming at them, like, oh fuck. I did manage to kill someone in a vineyard. We were in a grape presser, and they were standing alone in there, so I just like broke the controls and crushed them in there, and it was like a stealth kill, so nobody else noticed it. It was pretty fun. Like you get to do things like that.
Nice, nice. I liked the screwdriver kill, because to be honest, anytime I have a screwdriver in my hand, I definitely carry it backwards like I'm gonna stab somebody with it. And for some reason, that's the thought that runs through my head. I'm like, I totally fuck someone up with this.
And it's not like you use a lot of those in your day job or anything, so that's fun.
No, I don't work with tools
What's
on
a
a regular
screwdriver?
basis. What's that? I don't know the difference between a Phillips and a flathead. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, you're just a girl, right?
I'm just a lady.
All right, well, let's not go too far. I wouldn't say lady.
No, definitely not.
But you get to run around and do certain contracts and things like that. It's really fun, especially now with like the latest installments they have where you can like play online and add challenges and do different things. I have yet to venture into that realm, but I usually stick to the story. And there's always like different areas to unlock, so you can spawn in, different disguises you can start with, different weapons and items you can bring with you, like assault rifles, sniper rifles, shotguns. Just a lot of varieties and ways to do it. So it's a really fun game to play. I've ran through most of them, at least the more recent ones. But I'd recommend checking it out if you're just a fan of like murder fantasy type stuff, like you mentioned earlier.
I kind of feel like I would enjoy this just because like I have random bouts of aggression and I feel like I would like it just for that purpose. Be like a totally.
And speaking of, over the past like week, I found myself spending over $100 on several video games. And to justify that purchase, as an adult male who has a podcast, I decided to do what any sane person would do, and decided to make a segment out of this. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Rando Retros. That's right, everybody. Rando Retros. Essentially, what this is going to be is me going in an in-depth review for a retro game that I've been playing. And as you heard earlier, because I've spent so much money on games lately, this segment's going to carry me at least through the next few months of this podcast. Before I get into this, I wanted to talk about what brought on the inspiration for this, and it was actually another podcast that I had heard, but that I had a few issues with the way he was running it, so I feel like it is fair to give him his due respect. The podcast, Remember That Game, where essentially he goes back and reviews like older games. And it's a really
Mm-hmm.
fun podcast. I enjoyed listening to it. The problem was, though, is that like he would get some information wrong with certain games, like in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and he
Mm-hmm.
just got done playing it for about 40 hours, and I would just sit there and be like, no, how can you play this for 40 hours and get that wrong? It's an essential piece. Like, it's not even that hard a thing to fucking remember. But, things like that. Or he was reviewing
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon Snap, and he said he hadn't played the game for 20 years. And I'm like, well, that's not how this should work.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree that you should be playing it to refresh your memory. Because I feel like if I haven't looked at something or touched something in 20 fucking years, I'm gonna be like, oh, I don't remember that the way that I feel like I should to like review about it.
Right. And maybe I misunderstood him. Maybe he meant like up until then he hadn't played it for 20 years. But with like the San
Maybe.
Andreas thing and getting a piece of information wrong, I just thought, I don't know, it would be fun to kind of play with that idea and make it a segment of our show because I do play a lot of retro games. And for me, retro would fall into like the PS2, Xbox, and older era. So I try to avoid like the PS3 slash more recent stuff like that. And Keyauni, because you clearly don't know anything about video games, you get to hear in depth stuff about things that you otherwise wouldn't know anything else about.
Mm-hmm. I'm ready for it. I'm ready. I'm here to be your fucking support cheerleader. Go ahead. Tell me about these video games.
So the first video game that I wanted to talk about actually is one that I recently purchased on my phone, but have pretty much played at least consistently once a year since I got it on Steam, and well before that when it first came out on the original Xbox, and that is Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. Constantly rated one of the best games on the Xbox, and by far my favorite Star Wars game. You play a protagonist who's going around trying to help Basila find pieces of the Star Forge and destroy the antagonist, Darth Malak. So basically, you start out on the Endar Spire, and it's like an RPG turn-based game, kind of rolled like a D&D based system, where it's like you have strength modifiers and everything, and you build stats. It's going to be filled with spoilers, so I'll try to run through this without too many issues. But basically, once you start out as a character in Endar Spire, you crash, land on Terrace, and you save Basila, this Jedi. And then you guys go back and you realize your character is force sensitive, and he then becomes a Jedi. And he goes about finding pieces of the star map to find the Star Forge. And along the way, you recruit numerous allies, one of them being a Mandalorian Canderous, my favorite android and robot in the entire Star Wars universe, HK-47, just because he refers to every human as a meatbag and doesn't like anyone except for his master, Revan.
I'm gonna start referring to people as meat bags. Listen here, you fucking meat bag.
Now, I know I mentioned my love for this game. It essentially premiered on the Xbox, and I remember vividly playing this back when I was like 13 or 14. So this would have been about 14, 15 years ago when I first started playing it, I believe. And ever since then, like, it's one of those games that I've just regularly revisited because I've had such fond memories of going through it and playing as the main character and gathering the party and remembering where every little like nook and cranny is. And I'm not going to like go too in depth about the graphics or anything because I feel like it's kind of dumb to review games for that in modern times. But I mean, everything about it still holds up really well. Even the phone port isn't an issue to play with. All you have to do is, get used to scrolling around the screen with your hand and moving around the base, and it's not complicated. Everything still holds up the same. I enjoy playing it just as much on the PC as I do on my phone since I got used to it. And this
Mm-hmm.
game in particular opens up like it's before the current Star Wars universe or even like the prequels, like thousands of years beforehand. So you get to play as, this one guy, like I mentioned, and you join the Jedi. But the only difference is the Sith in this universe haven't enacted the rule of two, which is essentially like there can only be two Sith, which is why you have Palpatine and Vader, and you don't have like an army of Sith as opposed to when you had an army of Jedi. But in this game, in the universe that is the Old Republic, you have an army of Sith and Jedi. So it's like a full-on clash of lightsaber, good versus evil. You get to like choose what side you want to be on, good, like light side, dark side. They both have different powers, different conversations, different perks, different endings. And big spoiler plot twist, you find out that your character is actually Revan, who was the master of Darth Malak, the current Sith Lord, and you just had your memory wiped by the Jedi Council. So you can decide if you want to return to that mantle and be the Darth Sith Lord, or, claim retribution, which is the canon storyline, and go to the light side. And it's just one of those games
Oh.
that like really stuck with me after I beat it. Even the sequel, I just decades after the fact, I constantly find myself replaying these games because the replayability is just fun. There are quests that I still
Mhm.
haven't done because I don't need to, but I just know the story so well, what I want to do and what I don't want to do, and it's just one of those games that I keep picking up like without any issue, and it doesn't feel like it's ever dry.
I like that. I like that, you can choose like which direction you want to go and therefore creating like a different possibility each time you play it.
Yeah,
That
and
sounds
because it's like an
fun.
RPG element, you get to choose between so many different force powers. Like you have chain lightning, where you get to strike everybody in the room basically with lightning at once. You have the classic force choke. You have all these really fun things like that. Where like dark side, you can poison people with the force. Whereas light side, you have healing. You boost your party. You're more of a support class.
Mhm.
It's really like it's an exciting game with a lot of different options. You could dual wield lightsabers, get the double bladed, single bladed. You could even use blasters. It's really like a lot of possibilities, and it still follows the classic art like RPG tropes where you can get a tank, support class, range, and all that fun stuff. I mean, if you haven't for some reason played this and you're a Star Wars fan, I can't recommend it enough. It's one of those games that like I have it on my phone, and I'll probably play that here shortly once we're done with this, and just throw something on the TV because I've just had that much fun time replaying it. Could not
Nice.
recommend it enough. I would give it 10 dead Jedi younglings out of 10.
Out of 10?
Yep, 10 out of 10. Perfect game,
Mhm.
in my opinion. It still holds up.
Nice. Nice.
And that has been this first segment of Rando Retro.
Have you ever wanted to feel smooth and shiny? Are you tired of searching for the answers to those hard to buff rust spots? Well, come on over, darling, to the Spick und Span Shiny Heini Committee. We accept all robos. There is non-discrimination here, baby. Lean against our luxurious, wireless charging ports and relax while our experts grind away those embarrassing pubic metal shards. Get those gears gliding with grace in one of our PB Blaster infused schwitz houses. Or perhaps even a dip in our premium machine oil hot tubs. Oh yeah. We can get you back to that sexy fresh off the assembly line look you've always been searching for. So stop hesitating, darling. Bring those rusty bolts over here, baby, and show the world how beautiful the complete and total robotic annihilation of the entire human species can truly be. Come join us at the Spick and Span Shiny Heiny Committee, baby.
And we're back. As I mentioned earlier, we were talking about the hair raising, the horrific, the creepy, the crawly, the scary stuff. We were talking about supernatural events and paranormal activities. So, I thought I would lead this discussion, seeing as how I know what Keyauni has, and I know I'm not going to be able to top it. So, Keyauni, have you ever heard of the Greenwood Cemetery in Decatur, Illinois?
No, I have not.
Now, most of the information that I have here has been accredited to the author Troy Taylor, who seems to have a couple books based on general like Midwest type of haunting stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of it seems to be focused on the Greenwood Cemetery. Now, I didn't know about this until just I don't know, I'd say about a day and a half ago. But the Greenwood Cemetery is actually considered one of the most haunted cemeteries in North America, or America in general.
Really? In Decatur?
Yes, in Decatur, Illinois. Now, the first bodies in the cemetery was actually around like the 1820s. It was believed to originally have been a Native American burial ground. But, colonizers do what colonizers do, and we kind of, just kind of put our dead there too. So around 1857, it officially became incorporated as a, graveyard, and that's the official resurrection / establishment of it. But
Mhm.
it kind of gets weird because around 1908, this is the first reported case that I could come across. So one of the things that was like more notable about it was a mausoleum that they had resurrected in 1908, and it was closed in 1957. Part of the reason why it was closed because it was kind of decrepit and falling apart. After all, it was a public
Mhm.
mausoleum, and they just didn't have the money for the upkeep. But there were also reports of like strange noises and lights coming from the mausoleum at night when it was locked to the public, and nobody should have been in there. Reports of things like screaming and what have you.
Oh, what the fuck?
That was only one report, because after it was closed in 1957, they eventually demolished it about a decade later. Because, again, you had a lot of weird reports going on. If you go there now, you can still find, like, the cement in the grass where it was originally resurrected.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that happened here, there was apparently a prison transport train that would go through there during Civil War times.
Yeah.
And it would take people that were Southern prisoners in the North. So people that were prisoners would be sent there, and a bunch of Confederate soldiers in one of the cars contracted yellow fever and died along the way. When they stopped in Decatur and realized that, they buried them all in a hillside that currently now has a monument to the Union Army, over it. So that's just a little fun fact about that. But rumor has it that these exact souls still wander the graveyard because there was a heavy rain one day that washed out all of the bodies years after the fact, and so skeletal remains just washed everywhere.
Oh
and
my
had to
god.
be reburied. And so now on the southeastern part of the graveyard, you can see ghost lights floating. And, as people believe, it's the spirits trying to find their bodies that once resided in that section.
That's fucking crazy. That's crazy.
That's only two of the things, by the way.
Like, oh, we'll just stop here and just bury them all on a hillside. No worries. Fuck them.
That's okay. We'll pick up and remove the bodies. The rain wash, it's fine. Cut to a few years later. Yeah, man, what are those fucking orbs just floating over there on the grass?
Dead Confederate soldiers.
So there's that. There were reports of phantom funerals, which I can only assume is like, ghost funerals. I don't exactly know what that would entail. Just like, the ghost mocking a funeral as in they're doing the motions. I don't exactly know. I didn't really dig too deep into that one. There's another one about the Greenwood Bride, who's allegedly a woman who wanders around in her dress and is looking for her dead fiance who was murdered by bootleggers.
Oh.
And there are also reports of allegedly being old mine shafts and tunnels under the graveyards. Now, I don't know exactly what would be in there, but that just kind of adds to the lore of it. And this is considered, again, one of the more most haunted places in America. It's little graveyard in Decatur, Illinois. So I just thought people would appreciate that. It's since been revitalized, but it's it's still got a lot of the old markers there if you guys want to go by and check it out. I don't want to necessarily recommend it, but if you do, feel free to send in pictures.
I'm sure there's still plenty of fucking creepy shit that's going on there. I'm really surprised that you're just now learning about this. Like, I feel like we would have known most of the creepy things in Illinois by now.
I consistently look it up, but this is the first time I've actually seen anything about it, because usually the top 10 reveals like 3 things that aren't terribly far away from where I'm currently at, but I don't think I've ever seen anything about Greenwood. Maybe it's just because I didn't specifically look for like a broader spectrum, or I don't know, but it's the books that are based on the subject date back to like the early 2000s, so it's been a thing for a little bit now.
My mom has this book called Weird Illinois, and it's got like all this just creepy type stuff throughout different areas in Illinois. I don't know if she still has it, but it's a book. It exists.
Well, speaking of Weird Illinois, do you have any information about some weird shit in Illinois?
I do. I am going to discuss the witch's grave in Chesterville, Illinois, the Chesterville Witch. Now, I have a little backstory. Over 100 years ago, a 15-year-old girl who challenged her Amish upbringing and questioned the treatment of women was deemed as a witch and went missing and was found dead in a field.
Rightfully so. I'm kidding.
Rightfully so. How dare you question how you're being treated? Anyway, it's good to know that like most of mainstream women nowadays would be deemed as witches. Back in the day, we all would have been burned at the stake.
Oh, absolutely. What do you mean you have several men paying attention to you? Witch!
Witch! We would have been burned at the stake. Anyway, she was found dead in a field. When they did find her, they buried her, and an oak tree was planted to trap her soul. And the tree, there's like a wrought iron fence around it, and the tree has grown around the wrought iron fence that surrounds the grave. Like the wrought iron fence is like running through the tree because that's how big, the tree is now. And it said that as long as the tree is alive, it will keep her soul from seeking revenge. And weirdly enough, there is actually a slit in the tree where someone had tied a wire to the point that it's like cutting into the tree to like slowly kill the tree.
I've actually been there. I went there with my oldest brother at one point, and I don't recall the tree growing around the iron rod fence, but I do know about the slit you're talking about. And it was weird seeing that, like the notable intentional damage done to the tree for obvious reasons.
I now also have a personal story that has to do with the Chesterville Witch And my sister's the dumbass. Okay, so my younger sister was living with me at one point, and Cody knows this story because we've talked about it. And
It's one of
she
my favorite
decides with her and
Keyauni
her
stories.
she decides with her and her friends that they are going to start playing with a Ouija board. She comes home one night and she's like, Keyauni, we play with a Ouija board? And I'm immediately like, bitch, no, we don't do this. Don't play with that shit.
Did you know Hasbro's trying to fuck us up?
Like, bro, I'm like, that shit's not a game. Don't do that. And I was like, you know what? Whatever. If you do it, I don't give a shit. I was like, but do not bring that board to my home. That board cannot be here. I'm not doing, no, ma'am. And she was like, it's fine. It's fine. You know, they all thought it was all a laughy joke or whatever. And then one night she comes home scared, utterly scared shitless. And she's like, we went to the witch's grave tonight. She's like, Keyauni, and the fucking Ouija board moved. She's like, they freaked the fuck out and they left. Now, her ass, I actually talked to her about this yesterday. She said that, she's like, if I had said goodbye, everything would have been fine. And I'm like, says the dumbass playing with a Ouija board.
Sounds like some phasmophobia shit, but
anyway, so yeah, so she forgot to say goodbye or whatever. Her friends leave. Anyway, weird shit starts happening at my house. Cabinets start getting slammed. Things getting knocked off counters. My dog, whom regularly would not bark at anything unless it was a car door or someone knocking on the door, was like staring into dark corners, just growling, hair standing up on end. And it just progressively got worse and worse. And there were times when you could hear what sounded like somebody kind of like dragging themselves along the floor. Or there would be times that like there were lights on in a room, but there was a corner that was just way too dark than what it should have been, you know, with there being lights in the room and whatnot, like in the area, like it should not have been that dark over there.
Right, like it was too dark considering how much illumination there was. And you would hear someone like dig their nails into the ground and forcibly drag themselves along.
Yeah, it sounded like somebody was dragging themselves along the floor, and Ali would stare at these corners and he would just growl and growl. And I feel like animals have a sense of things. Like I feel like they can see things that we can't or experience things that we can't. And like there was just this overall weird sense of like dread in my house, and it was just very uncomfortable. And Kirsten kept having all these experiences, and it would be like 10 times worse when I wasn't at home. And I think that depending on what, you know, you guys believe, I believe that these like spirits or whatever you want to call them, I feel that they feed on fear. And so that's why I think it was more active when I was not home, because my sister was more terrified. Because anytime I felt that energy or felt off, like I would tell it to fuck off. I'd be like, fuck off, leave me alone, get the fuck out of my house. I ain't got shit to do with you. And my sister, like her and I both had this experience because we talked about it. Like there would be no one in the, you know how like when your door is closed and you can see the light underneath it, and if someone is standing outside your door, you can see their shadow, like
right.
of them standing outside your bedroom door. This happened to Kirsten and I constantly. When this whole thing was going on, there would be a shadow outside the bedroom door. You would hear that raking across the floor, and then there would be a shadow outside the bedroom door, which was absolutely fucking terrifying. And one night it got really bad. Kirsten called me actually while I was at work, just sobbing. And she's like, I'm so scared. She's like, things are falling over in the house. And she's like, Keyauni, it was outside my door again. She was like, and Rachel was here with me this time and it was still acting up. And it was really terrifying for her. So I actually spoke to a friend who is into a lot of like spiritual type things. And she can speak to things like this. And so she suggested that I smudge the house, which was white sage that she had gotten me. She explained to me how to cleanse the house. And then she said that it was very important that I cleansed my sister as well. So I did a walk through the house and like I was sweeping. And I said that like the only thing allowed in here is of light, love, and positivity. If you're not that, get the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? You can say whatever you want, really, you know, just as long as you put some oomph behind it. And
Hey, little bitch-ass ghost, better get the fuck out of this house before I shove my size 11 up your ass, you hear me?
yeah, that would work. I think that would be efficient. You know what I'm saying?
Me when I play Phasmophobia.
And so you essentially sweep this smoke through your house and you want to open a door in the house or a window or whatever. But it's like you're collecting all the dust in your house and you're sweeping it out. So you're doing that with all the energy. And so we get to the point where I'm smudging my sister and she almost passes out. Like she fell against the wall. She kind of like started to slide down a little, and then like she just immediately started to bawl after. Like she wouldn't talk about it for the longest time after it happened because she would just immediately break into tears because she's like I literally almost fainted. She's like I felt like what we were doing was kind of, like dumb or weird. She goes, until you did it to me. She goes, she's like, I literally almost fainted. And like, I had discussed this with several people who have had experiences like this. And they had told me that whatever it was had attached itself to my sister, that's how it was maintaining its balance in the house. So I believe that whatever she had spoken to on that Ouija board, whether it was the witch or not, whatever it was had attached itself to my sister and hitched a ride to my fucking home. So yeah. Yep. That's my story. And it was quite terrifying.
So, I meant to ask you this at the top of the stories, but I guess it's kind of irrelevant now. It still feels like something I should mention. You're a believer then, correct?
Yes. I don't know that it was the witch or whatever, but like I definitely believe in, I don't know what you would, spirits, the occult, whatever you want to label it as. I have had entirely too many life experiences with things such as this for me to not believe in it.
Like there was something and you don't doubt that.
Yeah, no, there was something and I don't doubt that. What it was, I don't know, but I don't think that it was good. And the fact that my dog, who normally never made a fucking peep and slept all the damn time, like he was Eeyore, was growling at corners, like, nope, something was not right. Something was not right. And I've definitely had multiple experiences like beyond that. That one was probably the scariest experience I've had. But I've had multiple experiences in my life where things like that have come about and it was unnerving. And, so I definitely believe in those things.
Okay. I mean, I guess if someone really pressured me, I would say that I do believe in it to some extent at least, because like I've had several people in my own life tell me, like my Uncle Joe, he worked in a nursing home and always swore up and down that he saw stuff. One of my brothers constantly, one of my nieces. Like there are just several people in my life that like if I couldn't trust them, like what the fuck? And I've always been open-minded to the experience of like clearly something has to happen to the energy. So no matter what it is, like if it manifests itself in a way that makes it like something that you could recognize or not. I mean, I'm open to the possibility that obviously it's a ghost or something has to happen. So I'm at the very least very open to the idea and curious and excited about the prospect of that.
And see, I like that you brought up energy because that's something that I was going to say is like, even science says that like energy doesn't die. So like, we have enough energy in our body to like run a city. So where does it go? You know what I'm saying? Now, do I think everyone ends up being a ghost? Probably not, but that's a whole in-depth 3-hour conversation that we could probably have at another fucking time.
We'll have to bring
you
CJ in for that one.
Yeah, but I do think that there is some type of energy there, with these things, these experiences that I've had. My mom used to live in this old Victorian house, and this is when we were older. But like there were times when absolutely no one was home because I called my mother to be like, is anybody here? And she's like, no. And I'm like, there are people walking upstairs. Like I can hear them walking back and forth in the upstairs. And she goes, yeah, that happens. So
That'll happen in an old house,
yeah, but it wasn't like the sound of creaking. It was literally the sound of footsteps to the point that I said hello and went upstairs and then called my mom like, are you guys home? And she was like, no. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I've had quite a few experiences, and I've had, my grandmother, who was a very religious woman, she had told me multiple stories as a child growing up about things like this. And I had always been very sensitive. There had always been like places that I would be uncomfortable or homes that I was like, yeah, I feel like my hair is standing up on end being in this particular room. And then I'd find out later that people are like, oh, yeah, the person who lived there like worshipped Satan and evil spirits. And I'm like, cool, bro. Like, it's like my body could sense that the energy in that room was off. Now, like I said, regardless of what it is actually, like, you know, for certain, I don't know. But I do believe that there's some weird shit amongst us.
I would agree. The closest thing I could say to having like any close to like a haunted experience or anything like that, I lived in a country home maybe when I was like 6 or 7, probably maybe a little
Mm-hmm.
bit younger than that.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is an old house, probably built in like the 1800s,
Mm-hmm.
and we would always hear things like if I was in the room upstairs by myself, because nobody wanted to be in the second floor at night. You know, if you didn't have a few people up there at the same time, because it was kind of creepy. Same with the basement, we'd always try to like stick together on the first floor. But I was up there playing WWF. Maybe it would have been No Mercy at the time, and I would hear like footsteps in the hallway, and I kept thinking it was my brother or somebody, but you wouldn't see anybody come from around the corner. So you kept,
Uh-huh.
I kept playing the game, and then eventually you would have like, you know, more and more noises. So I would just go downstairs and join everybody else. And I do remember there was also two other instances. Like this one time we were all hanging out in the living room, and my mother and father were on the couch with my sister, I believe it was, and they were watching TV, and there were a lot of footsteps upstairs, and they were like, oh, it must be, Cody and Chris running around, whatever. And I remember, like, because I was laying in front of the coffee table watching TV, and I stuck my head up, like, no, Mom, I'm right here. And, like, the look on her face was just. And that stairway, like, that got us to the second floor, had walls on both sides, and there was like a not a heavy door, but it was like a wooden one at the base of it. And I remember one day when we
Uh-huh.
were going down the stairs to go play outside, like we didn't have any windows open or doors or anything. But as we were about to we were about halfway at the bottom of the stairs, the bottom wooden door just slammed shut on us for no reason, and it was like me and my two siblings there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so like my family and I always kind of we have
Mm-hmm.
memories of that house and weird footsteps and things like that happening, but that's really the closest thing I could have to any sort of like claim to paranormal experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine that place was haunted. Well, I don't know necessarily haunted. I don't know what it is. There
Yeah,
was something going on.
there
Some
were a
type of
few other
energy
things like
there.
my mom would constantly talk about, like when she was still around in her mobile home, she would sense a dark presence there,
Uh-huh.
like in the hallway. Occasionally, you'd have a dog acting weird, or like people didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel great coming over because it kind of felt like off to them. And then once she
Yeah.
passed away, it kind of cleansed itself,
Yeah.
which may sound a little weird, but she did have a theory going on that she was being haunted by something.
That honestly doesn't sound weird at all. Because with what she was going through, like she also, she was sick. And I feel like things are attracted to certain kinds of energy. And I feel like some things may be like, okay, well, I'm here to kind of feed on this. I'm here to feed on this sadness or this, whatever. And I feel like it attaches itself to those things. So that does not sound weird at all. Like that actually really makes a lot of sense. I've also had experiences. I actually cleansed a friend's home for them, and there was a particular room that felt extremely like heavy to me. Like I'd walk into it and I felt like somebody was sitting on my chest. And come to find out, her son had been sick in that room for years, like almost died sick. And they had a lot of weird experiences and like uncomfortableness throughout the house. And then like I ended up cleansing the house for them. And like I said, that room in particular was extremely, extremely heavy. And then when she told me the story about it later, I was like, well, that kind of makes sense, because I feel like whatever it was had attached itself to his sadness within his sickness. So I feel like, the not so nice energies, I feel like, are attracted to shit like that. Now, I've also had experiences with like really good energies as well, or like just benign, not really good, but just benign. They're not bad or anything. Like I lived in this house when I was a teenager, and apparently this old man had had a heart attack in my room. And weird things used to happen in my bedroom, like things would get picked up and moved, or like my bedroom door would just close sometimes. Like it didn't slam closed, it just drift closed and shut nicely. So there was some kind of presence there, but it didn't mean me any harm. It wasn't a bad energy. So, crazy shit, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't claim to have any answers. I just know that, like I said earlier, there are people like immediately that I trust who've spoken of experiences that I obviously can't deny and people that I trust. And also when I was a kid, obviously, you know, I was a young age, but there were things that I still vividly remember, and my family definitely does. So I don't know. There's something to be said about being open-minded about the
Yeah.
world. Obviously, nobody has all the answers, and I think if you
Mhm.
do, then I don't know, you're kind of a dink.
You're kind of a dink. I don't know what a dink means, but I'm with
kind
it.
of a dink. I don't know the exact term, but you're kind of a dink. It fits.
You're kind of a douche nozzle.
So that's our episode for today, and I want to thank you guys for listening and
Yeah,
you know,
guys.
holding on this long for all of our fun stuff and our, you know, kind of different robot off episodes. If you want to keep listening and following us on Twitter at Robots Don't Age, then feel free to do that.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Abundant Studio. If you'd like a vibe check, you can get that at abundantstudio.com. And I'm now on Twitter at the Keyauni.
_Keyauni.
Yeah, the _Keyauni. Thank you.
The _KEYAUNI, because your name's also weird.
And thanks for listening, guys.